Captain Lee Jinho stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching the stars drift by through the main window. The ship was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. After 20 years in space, he knew this sound better than his own heartbeat. Today felt different, though. Something was coming. The communication officer turned in his chair. "Captain, we're getting a message. It's ... Strange. Strange how?" Jinho walked over to the control panel. The screen showed symbols he had never seen before. They moved and changed like living things. "It's from the Galactic Council," the officer said. His voice was quiet. "They want to talk to us." Jinho felt his chest tighten. Humans had been in space for 300 years. They had built colonies on dozens of worlds. They had met other species and traded with them. But the Galactic Council had never spoken to them directly before. The Council was old, older than human history. They ruled the galaxy from shadows. "Put it on the main screen," Jinho said. The symbols changed into words humans could read. The message was simple but cold. The species known as humanity is summoned to appear before the Galactic Council. You will answer charges of disrupting galactic peace. Failure to appear will result in immediate action against all human worlds. The bridge fell silent. Everyone looked at Jinho. He read the message again, hoping the words would change. They did not. "Sir," said Park Murray from her station near the back. She was the ship's expert on alien life. What could they mean by disrupting peace? "We've followed all the rules we knew about." Jinho shook his head. "I don't know, but we don't have a choice." Set course for the coordinates they sent. The ship turned toward the center of the galaxy. As they traveled, more messages came. Each one listed crimes humans had supposedly done. They had expanded too fast. They had built colonies where they should not have. They had changed things that were supposed to stay the same. Myray worked at her computer, trying to understand the charges. "Captain, look at this," she said. "They say we violated 17 different treaties. But we never signed any treaties with the Council." Kim Tae-ho, the ship's military advisor, looked up from his own screen. That might not matter to them. "These are old laws made before humans even left Earth." "How can we break laws we never knew existed?" asked Cho Hyuna. She was young and new to space diplomacy. This was supposed to be a simple trade mission to the outer colonies. Now she was part of humanity's first contact with the rulers of the galaxy. "Maybe that's the point," Tae-ho said quietly. The journey took 3 weeks. During that time, they learned more about what awaited them. The Council station was massive. It orbited a black hole at the center of the galaxy, drawing power from the spinning matter around it. 400 different species sent representatives there. 400 species, and now humans would stand before all of them. Hyuna spent her time reading everything she could find about the Council. What she learned worried her. "Captain," she said one evening as they ate dinner, "I think this trial is just for show." "What do you mean?" "The Council has done this before. When a new species gets too strong, too independent, they call them to the station. Most never come back to their home worlds." The room fell quiet except for the sound of eating. Everyone understood what she meant. "How many species have they judged?" Myray asked. "In the last 1,000 years?" 12 that I can find records of. All of them were expanding rapidly. All of them were changing the areas of space around them, just like us. Jinho put down his fork. "And what happened to them?" "They disappeared. Their colonies went dark. Their ships stopped flying. It was like they never existed." Tae-ho leaned back in his chair. "So this is an execution, not a trial." "Maybe," Hyuna said, "but I found something else. Something strange." She pulled up a star map on the wall screen. It showed the galaxy with different colors marking different territories. "Look at the pattern," she said. "Every species the Council removed was in this area." She pointed to a section near the galactic edge, far from the center. "Far from the old species? What's special about that area?" Junho asked. "It's where new life grows, where young stars form new planets, where evolution happens fastest," Myray understood first. They're not just removing species that break their laws. They're removing species that represent change itself. The ship shook slightly as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Through the window, they could see the council station. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The station looked like a flower made of metal and light, with thousands of petals reaching out into space. Each petal was bigger than Earth's moon. "Incoming transmission," the communication officer said. This time, the voice that spoke was ancient and tired. "Human vessel, you are cleared to dock at Platform 7 Alpha. Your delegation will be escorted to the Judgment Hall. You have 1 hour to prepare." Jinho looked around at his small team. 5 humans against the combined might of galactic civilization. The odds seemed impossible. "Remember," he told them as they prepared to leave the ship, "we're not just representing ourselves. We're speaking for every human who ever looked at the stars and wondered what was out there. Every person who chose to explore instead of staying safe at home." They walked through corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that it hurt to look at them directly. All of them watched. The human delegation with curious eyes. The Judgment Hall was vast. Thousands of representatives sat in rising circles around a central platform. Above them all, holographic screens showed the proceedings to billions of viewers across the galaxy. An alien with skin like starlight stood at a tall podium. Its voice filled the hall without need for speakers. "The Galactic Council calls this session to order. The species humanity stands accused of crimes against the natural order. They have spread chaos where there was peace. They have brought change where there was stability. They have violated the sacred laws that have kept our galaxy safe for 10,000 years. The alien gestured toward the human delegation. "Let them answer for what they have done." Jinho stepped forward. His voice seemed small in the enormous space, but it carried clearly. "We are here to answer your charges. But we do not understand what crime we have committed by trying to grow and learn and explore." The alien's eyes glowed brighter. "That," it said, "is exactly the problem." Around the hall, murmurs rose from hundreds of different species. The trial that would decide humanity's fate had begun. The second day of the trial began with evidence. The alien prosecutor called itself the Velthari Primarch. It was old beyond human understanding. When it spoke, the air itself seemed to listen. "Honored Council," the Primarch said, "let us examine the pattern of destruction this species has brought to our peaceful galaxy." The center of the hall filled with light. A 3-dimensional map appeared, showing part of the galaxy. Stars glowed in different colors. "Blue for peace," the Primarch explained. "Green for stability. Red for chaos." Dr. Song Yuna, humanity's legal representative, watched as the map changed. Red dots began appearing where human colonies had been built. The red spread like a disease across the peaceful blue and green. "Observe," the Primarch continued. "Before humans arrived in the Kepler sector, it had been unchanged for 2,000 years. 17 species lived there in perfect harmony. Trade routes were established, territories were fixed, peace reigned." The map zoomed in on one section. Yuna could see the careful boundaries between different species. Everything was ordered and neat. "Then humans came," the Primarch said. The map showed human ships arriving. Within 50 years, everything changed. The neat boundaries began to shift. New trade routes appeared. Some species expanded their territories while others moved to different areas entirely. The careful order dissolved. "Human traders ignored established routes," the Primarch said. "They offered new technologies that disrupted traditional ways of life. They encouraged young members of other species to explore beyond their home worlds. They brought chaos where there had been order." Yuna stood up. "That's not chaos," she sighed. "That's growth. Those species chose to trade with us. They chose to explore. We never forced anyone." The Primarch turned to look at her. Its eyes were like black holes, pulling in light. "Choice," it said, "is the beginning of all disorder." The evidence continued. The prosecution showed colony after colony, sector after sector. Everywhere humans went, change followed. Old systems broke down, new ones took their place. Species that had stayed in one place for centuries suddenly began building ships and exploring. Nam Ji-hoon sat in the back of the human group, barely listening. As an engineer, he was more interested in the station around them than the legal arguments. The architecture was fascinating. Everything was built to last forever. The walls were made of materials that would never wear out. The systems were designed to never need changes or improvements, but something was wrong. He could see it in the way the lights flickered sometimes. In the tiny vibrations that ran through the floor. This station was old. Very old, and old things, even perfect things, eventually broke down, he whispered to Yusala, who sat next to him. She studied cultures for a living. Look at the way they built this place, he said quietly. Nothing can be changed or improved. It's all fixed forever. Sola looked around with new eyes. That explains a lot, she whispered back. Their whole civilization is built the same way, no changes allowed. No improvements possible. On the screen, the evidence kept coming. The prosecution showed a world called Harmony. Before humans arrived, 5 different species had lived there for 3,000 years. Each species had its own continent. They traded only what was necessary. They never traveled to each other's lands. Perfect balance. Then human explorers landed. They met all 5 species. They shared human music, art, and stories. They brought new foods and new ideas. Within a generation, the 5 species were working together on projects that none could have done alone. They built cities that mixed all their different styles. They created new art forms that combined all their traditions. Destruction of cultural purity, the Primarch declared. The ancient ways were lost forever, Yuna tried to object. They weren't destroyed. They were combined into something new, something richer. Something chaotic, the Primarch replied. More evidence followed. The prosecution had records going back centuries. Every human colony, every trade agreement, every exploration mission. They had been watching humanity since the first human ship left Earth's solar system. The pattern was always the same. Humans arrived. They met the local species. They shared ideas and technologies. Things changed. Old systems that had worked for thousands of years suddenly seemed outdated. Young aliens began to question why things had to stay the same. They began to explore and experiment and dream of different futures. This is their greatest crime, the Primarch said, gesturing toward the human delegation. They do not destroy through violence. They destroy through inspiration. They make others want to change. They spread the disease of dissatisfaction with the natural order. The hall was silent. Representatives from 400 species looked down at the 5 humans. Many of them seemed troubled by what they had heard. Dr. Song Yuna felt the weight of their stares. This was worse than she had feared. They weren't being judged for breaking specific laws. They were being judged for their very nature as human beings. Your Honor, she said, standing up again. The prosecution makes it sound like change is evil, but change is how life grows, how civilizations advance, how problems get solved. The Primarch's voice grew cold. Change is how order dies. But Yuna was not finished. What about the good changes? The species that were dying out until human medicine saved them? The worlds that were running out of resources until human engineers found solutions? The conflicts that ended when human diplomats brought enemies together? Temporary benefits, the Primarch said. The price is the destruction of stability itself. In the audience, some of the younger species began to whisper among themselves. They remembered the benefits Yuna mentioned. They remembered how their lives had improved after meeting humans, but the older species, the ones who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, remained silent. Their faces showed no emotion. The prosecution's final piece of evidence was the most damning. They showed a computer simulation of what the galaxy would look like in 1,000 years. If humans were allowed to continue spreading, the careful boundaries between species territories had completely disappeared. Old trade routes were replaced by a complex network connecting every inhabited world. New technologies appeared and spread rapidly. Some species had grown to fill multiple star systems. Others had changed so much they were barely recognizable. This, the Primarch said, is what they offer us. The complete destruction of the order that has kept peace for 10 millennia. Random chaos in place of careful structure? The simulation was beautiful in its complexity. Stars connected by streams of light, worlds filled with mixed populations working together. New forms of art and science flowering everywhere. But to the ancient council, it looked like madness. The prosecution rests, the Primarch said. The evidence speaks for itself. This species cannot be allowed to continue their campaign of disruption. As the day's session ended, the human delegation walked back to their quarters in silence. They had watched their entire history being presented as evidence of their guilt. "They're not wrong," Hina said quietly as they sat in their small room. "We do change things everywhere we go." "That's what makes us human," Genho replied. "But what? If that's not what the galaxy wants?" she asked. "What if they're happy with things the way they are?" Taiho looked out the window at the ancient station around them. "Then we're all in the wrong place," he said. "Because the universe doesn't care what anyone wants. It keeps changing whether we like it or not. The only choice is whether we change with it or get left behind." Outside their window, the black hole at the center of the galaxy spun in its eternal dance. Even here, at the supposed center of order and stability, nothing stayed the same forever. Kang Minho walked slowly to the center of the Great Hall. As humanity's historian, he had spent his life studying the past. Now he had to use that knowledge to save the future. The council representatives watched him with cold eyes. After 2 days of hearing evidence against humanity, many had already made up their minds. The humans were guilty. The only question was what punishment would follow. Minho looked up at the thousands of alien faces surrounding him. His voice was steady when he spoke. "Honored Council, the prosecution has shown you many things that humans have done. They have shown you change. They have shown you growth. They have shown you progress." He paused. "They have shown you life itself." Murmurs rippled through the hall. The Velthari Primarch's eyes narrowed. "The prosecutor says we are guilty of bringing change," Minho continued. "I say we are guilty of something else entirely. We are guilty of being alive." He gestured, and images appeared in the air above him. But these were not the neat maps the prosecution had used. These were pictures of dead worlds. "This is Kepler 442b, Minho said. "The prosecution told you it was peaceful for 2,000 years before humans arrived. They did not tell you why it was peaceful." The image showed a world covered in ruins. Ancient cities crumbled into dust. Empty spaceports where no ships had landed for centuries. "It was peaceful because nothing lived there anymore," Minho said. "The species that built those cities had died out 500 years before humans arrived. They died because they stopped changing, they stopped growing. They stopped adapting to new challenges." Dr. Lim Subin stood up in the human section. She was an archaeologist who had spent years studying dead civilizations. "The pattern is everywhere," she said. "We have found the ruins of dozens of species across the galaxy. All of them followed the same path. They reached stability. Then they stopped innovating. Then they slowly faded away." The hall fell silent. Many of the council members had never heard this information before. Minho showed more images. Dead star systems where the lights had gone out. Abandoned space stations, drifting empty through the void. Worlds where the last survivors had built monuments to their own extinction. "The galaxy is dying," he said simply. "It has been dying for thousands of years. New stars form more slowly than old ones burn out. Fewer children are born each generation. Fewer new ideas are tried. Fewer risks are taken." He turned to face the Velthari Primarch directly. "You call change dangerous. But the real danger is standing still. The real danger is believing that things can stay the same forever." In the audience, Bei Wanho was quietly working at his communication device. As a specialist in alien languages, He had been listening to the private conversations happening around the hall. What he heard surprised him. Many of the younger species were not happy with the trial. They whispered about the benefits of contact with humans. They talked about new technologies that had improved their lives. They mentioned friends and colleagues who had been inspired by human ideas to try new things, but they were afraid to speak openly. The older species, the ones who controlled the council, had made it clear that supporting humanity was dangerous. Wanho passed his findings to Hanyunji, the team's expert on alien psychology. She read his notes and nodded grimly. "They're all scared," she whispered to the others. "Even the ones who agree with us. The council has created a system where speaking up means risking everything." On the floor of the hall, Minho continued his defense. "The prosecution has shown you maps of how we have changed your galaxy. Let me show you maps of what your galaxy was becoming before we arrived." New images appeared. These showed the slow decline of galactic civilization over thousands of years, trade routes that had closed, colonies that had been abandoned, entire sectors where no new exploration had happened for centuries. "This is what stability looks like," Minho said. "This is what happens when change stops. Not peace, not harmony, death." He showed them star charts spanning 10,000 years. The pattern was clear. The galaxy had been slowly winding down like an old clock. Fewer ships traveled between worlds. Fewer messages were sent across the void. Fewer children were born to replace the old. "We are not the disease," Minho said. "We are the cure." The Primarch stood up, its ancient form towering over the human historian. "You speak of death," it said, "but we have preserved life for millennia. We have prevented wars, we have maintained order." "You have maintained a graveyard," Minho replied. The words hung in the air like a challenge. For a moment, the great hall was completely silent. Then Dr. Lim Subin activated her own display. "Look at the archaeological evidence," she said. "Before the current system was established, this galaxy was full of life. New species evolved constantly. New technologies appeared every few generations. Art and music and literature flourished on thousands of worlds." Her images showed the galaxy as it had been long ago, young species reaching for the stars, rapid technological advancement, cultural exchange between civilizations. "Then something changed," she continued. "The older species decided that growth was too dangerous. They created laws to prevent change. They established systems to maintain order. They turned the galaxy into a museum." More images appeared. The slow transformation from a living, growing galactic civilization to the static system that existed now. "Museums are beautiful," Subin said, "but nothing grows in them, nothing lives in them, nothing changes in them. They preserve the past while killing the future." Hanyunji stepped forward. "The council fears us because we remind them of what they used to be," she said. "Every species in this room once had the same drive we have, the same curiosity, the same willingness to take risks for the sake of discovery." She gestured toward the ancient representatives. "You were explorers once, you were innovators. You were young and eager and unafraid of the unknown. What happened to that part of yourselves?" Some of the older council members shifted uncomfortably. They remembered those days, though they had tried to forget them. "We grew wise," the Primarch said. "We learned that change brings pain, that growth brings conflict, that exploration brings danger. And now you are dying of that wisdom," Yunji replied gently. "All of you, your birth rates are falling. Your technologies are stagnating. Your young people dream of nothing because you have taught them that dreams are dangerous." Around the hall, younger representatives began to nod. They recognized the truth in her words. "Humanity offers you a choice," Minho said, retaking the floor. "You can continue on your current path. You can maintain your perfect order while your civilization slowly fades away. Or you can remember what it means to be alive." He showed them one final image. It was Earth as seen from space. A blue marble covered in clouds and lights and life. "This is our home," he said. 300 years ago, we could have stayed there forever. We had everything we needed. We were safe. We were comfortable. We were stable. The image changed to show human ships leaving Earth's solar system for the first time. But we chose to leave. We chose to explore. We chose to take risks because staying safe meant staying small. And staying small meant staying dead. He looked around at the thousands of representatives. We offer you the same choice we made. Come with us into the unknown. Take risks for the sake of growth. Change for the sake of life itself. The hall was quiet when he finished. For the first time since the trial began, many of the council members were actually thinking instead of simply judging, but the Primarch was not convinced. Pretty words, it said. But words cannot hide the chaos you have brought to our ordered galaxy, Minho smiled sadly. No, he agreed, they cannot, because chaos is another word for life. And life, honored Primarch, is the one thing you're perfect. Order cannot allow. As the session ended, cracks were beginning to show in the Council's unity. Some species were starting to wonder if the charges against humanity might actually be the very qualities the galaxy needed to survive. Rodan had always been good with numbers. As a quantum physicist, she understood how energy moved through space and time. But the numbers she was seeing now frightened her. She worked quietly in the humans' quarters while the others slept. Her computer screen showed power readings from the Council station. The massive structure drew energy from the black hole at the galaxy's center, just as everyone knew. But the readings told a different story than what appeared on the surface. The station is dying, she whispered to herself. The energy systems that had worked for thousands of years were failing. Not quickly, but steadily. Like an old man whose heart beats a little slower each day. The ancient aliens had built their station to last forever. But forever was proving to be shorter than they had planned. She woke up Shin Ji-wan and Oh Young-ho, the ship's engineers. They looked at her data with growing alarm. These power fluctuations, Ji-wan said, pointing at the screen. They're not random. There's a pattern. The whole system is breaking down. Young-ho pulled up additional data on his own device. It's not just the station, he said. Look at these readings from the hyperspace communication network. The network that connected the entire galaxy was showing signs of stress. Messages took longer to reach their destinations. Some sectors were losing contact entirely. The infrastructure that held galactic civilization together was slowly crumbling. How long do they have? Dan asked. G1 did quick calculations. At this rate, maybe 100 years before critical systems start failing completely. 200 years before the whole network collapses. That explains a lot, Young-ho said quietly. No wonder they don't want anything to change. They're too busy trying to keep their old systems working. Meanwhile, Kim So-young was having her own breakthrough. As the team's language expert, she had been given access to the Council's historical archives. What she found there made her hands shake as she read. The records went back 50,000 years. They told a story very different from what the Council claimed. Long ago, the galaxy had been a wild place. Young species expanded rapidly across the stars. They fought wars, yes, but they also created wonders. New technologies appeared constantly. Art and literature flourished. Life spread to every corner of the galaxy. Then came the Great War. The records were unclear about the details, but it had been terrible beyond imagining. Entire star systems were destroyed. Billions died. The surviving species were traumatized by what their rapid growth and competition had led to. So they made a choice. They would create a system to prevent such wars from ever happening again. They would control growth. They would limit expansion. They would sacrifice innovation for stability. At first, it worked. The wars stopped. Peace reigned across the galaxy. But peace came at a price that grew heavier with each passing century. So-young shared her discoveries with the others as they prepared for the day's session. The trial was entering its 4th day, and the Council was preparing to vote on humanity's fate. They're not evil, she told her teammates. They're scared. They've been scared for 50,000 years. Captain Jinho nodded grimly. Scared people make bad decisions. And they've had a long time to make them. In the Great Hall, the atmosphere was tense. Word of humanity's defense had spread throughout the station. Some species were beginning to question the charges. Others remained firmly opposed to any change in the established order. The Primarch called for final arguments before the vote. Dr. Song. Yuna stood to speak for humanity one last time. Honored Council, she began, we have heard much about the crimes humanity has committed. But I want to talk about a different kind of crime, the crime of waste. She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy as it existed now. Thousands of star systems with only a few inhabited worlds each. Vast regions of space where no ships traveled. Entire sectors that had been written off as too dangerous or too distant to explore. This galaxy could support 1 trillion times more life than it does now, she said. There are worlds perfect for colonization sitting empty. There are resources enough to feed countless civilizations going unused. There are discoveries waiting to be made in every corner of space. She turned to face the council representatives. Directly, you talk about preserving order. But what are you really preserving? A galaxy where most of its potential goes to waste. Where fear trumps curiosity. Where the old refuse to make room for the new. The Primarch rose to object, but Yuna continued speaking. You judge us for changing things. But the things we change are stagnant systems that were already dying. We help species that were fading away find new reasons to thrive. We open trade routes that bring prosperity to worlds that have been forgotten. We ask questions that lead to solutions for problems you had given up trying to solve. In the audience, representatives from younger species began to murmur agreement. They had seen the benefits of contact with humanity firsthand. The prosecution wants you to believe that chaos and growth are the same thing, Yuna said. But they are not. Chaos is what happens when systems fail completely. Growth is what happens when healthy systems adapt to meet new challenges. She showed images of human colonies working alongside alien populations. Mixed communities where different species shared knowledge and culture. Worlds that had become more prosperous and more interesting after human contact. This is not chaos, she said. This is evolution. This is life finding new ways to flourish. The Primarch stood up, its ancient form radiating displeasure. The human speaks of benefits, it said, but she ignores the costs. Change brings conflict. Growth brings competition. Innovation brings risk. Yes, Yuna agreed. It does. But the alternative is slow death. And, frankly, that's a higher price than any species should have to pay for safety. As she sat down, Rodean stood up with her technical findings. Before you vote, she said, there is something you need to know. Your systems are failing. She displayed her power analysis for the entire council to see. The declining energy readings. The failing communication networks. The infrastructure that was breaking down after millennia of use. You have spent so much effort maintaining the status quo that you forgot to maintain the systems that support it, she said. Your station is dying. Your networks are failing. Your perfect order is built on a foundation that is crumbling beneath your feet. The hall erupted in surprised voices. Many council members had not known how bad the situation had become. The humans are not your problem, Dan continued. Entropy is your problem. The universe itself is changing whether you like it or not. You can either change with it or be destroyed by it. Shinji Wan added his own findings about the failing hyperspace network. Within a generation, some sectors will be completely cut off from galactic civilization. Unless someone finds new solutions to old problems, this council will rule over scattered fragments instead of a united galaxy. Oh, Young-ho presented data about declining birth rates and reduced innovation across council-controlled space. Your stability is an illusion, he said. You are not preventing change. You are simply making it happen more slowly and more painfully. The evidence was overwhelming. The galaxy's ancient systems were indeed breaking down. The perfect order the council had maintained for millennia was proving to be unsustainable, but Kim So-young delivered the most damaging revelation of all. She presented the historical records she had discovered. You made your choice 50,000 years ago, she told the council. You chose safety over growth after a terrible war. But that choice has consequences you never considered. She showed them population charts spanning millennia, birth rates falling, exploration decreasing, innovation slowing to almost nothing. You did not prevent another great war, she said. You prevented all wars, but you also prevented all growth, all discovery, all progress. You chose to survive, but you forgot to choose to live. The ancient Primarch was silent for a long moment. When it finally spoke, its voice was tired. And what do you propose? That we abandon everything we have built? That we return to the chaos that nearly destroyed us? Soyao shook her head. We propose that you remember who used to be. Before the fear, before the restrictions, before you decided that safety was more important than purpose. She showed them one final image. It was from the deep historical archives. A picture of young aliens from the Primarch's own species, reaching toward the stars with wonder in their eyes. You were explorers once, she said gently. You were innovators. You were dreamers. What happened to those dreams? For the first time since the trial began, the Primarch had no answer. The final day of the trial began with chaos. Representatives from dozens of species were arguing among themselves. Some demanded humanity's immediate punishment. Others called for the charges to be dropped. The unity the council had maintained for thousands of years was cracking apart. General Seokmin had remained silent throughout the trial. As humanity's military representative, he had watched and listened while others spoke. Now, as the council prepared for its final vote, he stood up. The hall fell quiet. Everyone knew that military leaders spoke only when words had failed and action was required. Honored Council, Seokmin said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. I have one thing to say before you vote. Humanity will accept whatever judgment you make. Surprised murmurs rippled through the audience. They had expected defiance from the military man, not submission. If you decide we are guilty, Seokmin continued, we will leave. We will take our ships and our colonies and find empty space far from your territories. We will not fight you. We will not resist. The Velthari Primarch leaned forward. And if we forbid you from leaving? If we decide your very existence is too dangerous to allow? Seokmin looked directly at the ancient alien. Then you will have to live with the consequences of that choice. But understand this. The problems we have shown you will not disappear. When we do, he gestured to the displays that still showed the failing infrastructure. The declining populations, the crumbling systems that held galactic civilization together. Your networks will continue to fail. Your birth rates will continue to fall. Your technologies will continue to stagnate. Removing us will not solve these problems. It will only guarantee that no one will be left who knows how to solve them. Dr. Peek Jin-hee, the team's biotechnology expert, stood up beside him. We offer you partnership, she said. Humans have always been good at fixing things that are broken. We can help repair your failing systems. We can help your declining populations find new reasons to grow. We can help your stagnant societies rediscover innovation. She showed images of human-alien cooperation from the colonies. Mixed research teams making breakthroughs that neither species could have achieved alone. Combined settlements that were more prosperous and happier than either could have been separately. But we cannot force you to accept help, she continued. We can only offer it. The choice is yours. Around the hall, the younger species began speaking up. For the first time, they found the courage to voice their true thoughts. A representative from the Altair colonies stood up. The humans have been our neighbors for 50 years, she said. Our worlds are more prosperous now than they have been in centuries. Our young people have hope again. How is this a crime? Another voice came from the vegan sector. Human traders brought us technologies that solved resource problems we had struggled with for generations. Human doctors helped us fight diseases that were killing our children. Are we supposed to see this as harmful? More voices joined in. Species after species spoke about the benefits of contact with humanity. the innovations, the prosperity, the renewed sense of purpose that came from having neighbors who were not afraid to try new things, but the older species remained silent. The ones who had ruled the galaxy for millennia watched the growing support for humanity with cold eyes. The Primarch raised one ancient hand and the hall fell quiet again. "You speak of benefits," it said, "but you are young. You do not remember the Great War. You do not understand what unchecked growth leads to." "Neither do you," said a new voice from the back of the hall. Everyone turned in surprise. The speaker was ancient even by council standards, a being so old that few remembered its species name. It moved slowly to the center of the hall, its form flickering like a dying star. "I was there," the ancient being said. "I fought in the Great War. I saw the destruction. I helped write the laws that created the current system." The Primarch's eyes widened. "Elder Xanth? But you have been in meditation for for 20,000 years, Xanth replied. 20,000 years of watching our galaxy slowly die while we congratulated ourselves on maintaining peace." The ancient being turned to address the entire council. "We made our choice out of fear and pain. We chose survival over life. We chose safety over growth. We thought we were being wise." Xanth's form grew brighter, drawing energy from some deep reserve. "But wisdom without courage is just another word for cowardice. And cowardice, no matter how pretty we make it sound, always leads to death." The hall was completely silent now. Even the Primarch seemed stunned by this intervention. "The humans are not our enemies," Xanth continued. "They are our salvation. They remind us of what we used to be. What we could be again if we found the courage to stop being afraid." The ancient being looked directly at the human delegation. "The question is not whether you have disrupted our order. The question is whether our order was worth preserving in the first place." Xanth's form began to fade as the energy required to manifest grew too great. "I cast my vote for life over death, for growth over stagnation, for courage over fear. The rest of you must choose for yourselves." The ancient being disappeared, leaving behind only a faint glow that slowly faded. The Primarch stood alone at its podium, looking older than it had moments before. Around the hall, representatives whispered among themselves. The intervention by Elder Xanth had changed everything. "The council will vote," the Primarch announced, its voice barely audible. The voting took 3 hours. One by one, species after species cast their decision. Some voted for humanity's conviction. Others voted for complete acquittal. But most chose a third option that had emerged during the debate: conditional acceptance. Humanity would be allowed to remain in the galaxy, but under new agreements. Human expansion would be regulated but not stopped. Human innovation would be monitored but not suppressed. Human colonies would be integrated into the larger galactic community under a new framework that balanced growth with stability. When the final vote was tallied, the result was closer than anyone had expected. Humanity had won, but barely. The Primarch stood to announce the verdict. "The species humanity has found, not guilty of crimes against galactic order. Instead, you are found guilty of something else entirely." The human delegation held their breath. "You are found guilty of showing us what we have become," the Primarch said quietly. "And perhaps what we might become again." The ancient alien looked around at the council representatives, many of whom were still arguing among themselves about the vote. "The old treaties are dissolved," the Primarch announced. "The laws that have governed galactic expansion for 10 millennia are hereby revoked. Each species must choose its own path forward." The hall erupted in shocked voices. Some cheered. Others protested angrily. The careful order that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years was ending, but the Primarch was not finished. "However, this council will continue to exist. Not as rulers, but as coordinators. Not as judges, but as mediators. We will help species work together instead of forcing them to stay apart." The Primarch looked directly at Captain Jinho. "Humanity will serve as advisors in this new role. Your experience with change will help us learn to adapt to a galaxy that is no longer frozen in time." As the session ended, representatives from hundreds of species began approaching the human delegation. Some wanted to establish new trade relationships. Others sought technological partnerships. Many simply wanted to express gratitude for showing them that change was possible. Jinho stood with his team in the center of the Great Hall, watching the transformation begin. "What do you think?" he asked quietly. "Did we win?" Park Mare looked around at the chaotic but hopeful scene unfolding around them. "I don't think this was ever about winning or losing," she said. "It was about choosing between life and death, between growth and stagnation, between hope and fear." Cho Hyuna smiled as a group of young aliens approached them with eager questions about human technology. "Look at their faces," she said. "When was the last time you saw that kind of excitement in the council chambers?" Kim Tai-ho was more pragmatic. "The real work starts now," he said. "Changing laws is easy compared to changing minds. It will take generations to undo thousands of years of fear." "Then we better get started," Jinho replied, as the human delegation prepared to return to Earth with news of their success. The Great Hall began to transform around them. The ancient amber lights that had illuminated the chamber for millennia slowly shifted to pure white. The change was subtle but symbolic. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy was ready to dream of tomorrow. The council station continued its eternal orbit around the black hole at the galaxy's center. But now it carried something it had not held for millennia: hope for the future. The judgment of humanity had ended not with punishment or celebration, but with the quiet recognition that some changes were worth the risk. In the silence that followed the chaos of debate, a new chapter in galactic history began to write itself. And humanity, no longer on trial but now serving as teachers, prepared to help their neighbors remember what it meant to reach for the stars.